What's up everybody, Renfail here, and as promised, after the second playthrough wrapped up, I said I was going to be getting into the shipbuilding side of the game, and today we're doing the Ultimate Beginner's Guide to Shipbuilding on the Xbox. So for those of you who've been waiting to know how to do this with the Xbox controller, either on the Xbox or on the PC with the controller, that's what this one's all about. So hopefully you're ready to dive in. If you're new to Starfield or new to shipbuilding in general, that's okay. Everyone starts somewhere. Don't forget to check out the playlist down below. I've got 2 full playthroughs of the game and a lot of guides from that time. We'll be playing more Shattered Space and beyond. So hopefully you'll tune into the daily streams that happen at 11 a.m. here and on Twitch. I play a lot of different games, so check them all out. Don't forget the Discord and the Patreon. Today we're going to be diving into ships. We're going to be starting with a look at this ship and using this ship as the base model that we're going to be starting from to build our own ship from scratch. So without further ado, let me turn the camera off and let's get into the guide at hand. First thing you're looking for before you can do any ship modifications or shipbuilding is going to be the ship's service technician. Now you're going to find one of these guys on every major planet where you land, near the landing pad itself. So just look for this guy, you're going to talk to this guy, and you're going to go down to where it says, I'd like to view and modify my ships. Once you've done that, you're going to come into this menu. And you're going to see at the bottom, if you're in a ship you already own, you're going to see a part where it says Ship Builder or Upgrade Ship. If you haven't yet registered a ship, like this for example, this is a ship that I picked up from a mission, and I've yet to register it. If I want to work on this ship, I would need to register it first. We're going to go ahead and do that. That makes it mine. And at this point, I can then get into the ship builder where I can upgrade the ship directly from here. There is one big thing you need to know about shipbuilding in Starfield, regardless of whether you're talking Xbox or PC. You cannot build a ship from scratch. You have to first start with a ship that you already own or at least have registered. And once you have it registered, like we've done right here, we could take all of these bits and pieces and delete all of them. Or you can go in here and start modifying this existing ship. Either way, you cannot start completely from scratch. You have to first take a ship that you already own or have registered, break it down from there, and you can build from here. Now, one of the cool things, if you go into the ship builder, which we're going to do right now, you're going to hit the X button. That's going to bring us into this section right here. And then from here, we can take individual parts if we want to. As an example, we can pick this, we can pull this out, and notice that we have a button down at the bottom right. It says delete, and we can then just choose to delete that piece right there. Or we can choose to take another piece and just delete it right on the body as it is right now. Notice we are getting some credits back for each one of these that we do in this manner. The blue in the top right is the representation of the credits that we've earned. You can also select all of these with the LB button in this manner and choose to delete things in bulk, and this will allow you to start from scratch. Of course, you can undo all of that. The simple click of a button, you can continue to undo all of that until you get to the point where you're ready to hit the flight check and work your way out of here to actually naming your ship and finishing the build. And if there is anything wrong with your build, this is the big thing to understand before we actually get into the build process, is that at no point in time will this system let you exit the ship builder with a build that does not function as a flying vessel. When you go to the ship build, it'll show, here, let me just delete this, and maybe we'll delete the Docker as an example. We'll take this, we'll delete this, where all of a sudden it says one error in the bottom right. If I were to go to the flight check, it's going to say ship is missing a Docker. It's going to tell you what you're missing if you want to actually make a ship. So that, just bear that in mind if you're going to be building something. You will get warnings letting you know if something is incompatible. Red is bad. Yellow is just a warning. It's just letting you know that, hey, if you reduce mass or add engines, it'll improve mobility. Hey, the ship's missing a weapon assignment. You could put another one on the ship. It's giving you tips as to what to do in this scenario. One of the trickiest things to do for a lot of players is, how do you actually move these pieces around? How do you move the camera around? How do you get things where you want to where you can see? So let's go over the controls really quick so you understand this part of it. So right trigger zooms you in, left trigger zooms you out. On the right thumbstick, moving right or left is going to pan you around the center here. Okay? Using the right thumbstick up and down is going to move you up and down like so. Left and right on the thumbstick is going to move you laterally left or right with the object that you have selected, or it's just going to be your cursor. Similarly, moving forward or back on the left thumbstick is going to move you forward and backwards on that same plane. Now, you're also going to notice that there are multiple tiers here. So as an example, if we're just moving the camera, this is all we're doing right now. If you want to move the tier of the object, you have to use the directional pad by going up and down, like so. So this is essentially moving up through tiers, and there are multiple tiers going up and going down, so on and so forth. So what we can see is that if we want to move it up to a tier here, we would then, hang on, let's move our camera back over here so we can see this a little bit better. If I were to have this up a tier, it's going to mount in a different place because we've moved it up a tier. But if I move it up another tier, suddenly we get into the red and it won't mount because there's nowhere for me to mount. So what I'm looking for is these little points right here, these hard points where I can actually connect something. So I would go down and I could then lock it in place to that one or to that one as we see fit. So in this case, it started off here. We would put it back in place like that. That's how you control the camera, and that's how you control the objects that you're working with. So you have your movement around, looking up, looking down. You have your left, right, and then forward and back, and then of course changing your tiers using the up and down on the D-pad accordingly. And then right and left is just undo and redo, which doesn't have anything to do with the movement, but just so that you're aware. One of the things that I find the ship builder is really useful for here when you've got an existing ship is it's a great way to look at how another ship has been assembled so you can understand how to break things down and where you might want to be placing things. So there's nothing wrong with using this as a base model and then from here going, okay, let's go ahead and start and build something of our own just to the side. And the way you would do that is say, okay, let's start with like the landing bay. As an example, if we wanted to, I could click this landing bay right here. We're hovering over it right now. You could then, once we're hovering over it, you're going to notice on the bottom right a button that says duplicate. So if we wanted to come in here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Here is the landing bay. If I wanted to duplicate that, I would just hit the Y button. It is now duplicated. I have one in red that's underneath my button. We could then move that out and stick that right over here. So now I'm essentially building a ship right to the side of where that one is located. And then what I can do is I can start pulling bits and pieces apart from here and saying, okay, how does all this fit together? Let's move this to the side. Okay, so they've got the landing bay there, and then on top of that, he's got a control station. Okay, well, maybe I want to just duplicate that and move it over, and those are the two pieces that I want to start with. And then after that, I can start building my own. So I can then put the core of that together there, and then I can start fleshing things out from here. And I can say, okay, maybe they've got the Hope Docker 4. Maybe I just put a different Docker there. Some of the things you need to know about this system before you go any further is that you can't rotate any of the components. The engines and the habitats are always going to have, and so will some of the dockings, are always going to have a set orientation. So you can't actually switch between mounting something like horizontally or vertically. So as an example, this Docker right here can only be placed horizontally like this. You can't flip it to put it up top or down below. It's only going to connect to either the front or the back or something. Now what you can do is you could take this and you could choose to, in some cases, depending on what we're looking at, you can flip things around as you place them, but you cannot spin them. So it's a matter of flipping, mirroring either side to side or front to back, but it's mostly for the structural components. So some things can be flipped, but not all things can be flipped. And the big thing here is that in Starfield, there's no such thing as you have to have something be symmetrical. You can build the blockiest, ugliest thing that you've ever seen. All that the game cares about is whether or not it's functional and can it fly. Does it have the right parts that go together? And then you can go from there. Once you've decided that you're ready to start building your ship from the parts that you want to place on the ship, you're going to need to figure out how to open up the menu. If you hover your cursor over something, you're going to get the options to select it, to edit it, to delete it, or whatever, to paint it. But if you move your cursor out in the middle of nowhere, you're going to see a button that says Add. So you hit the A button, and it's going to bring up this list of pieces that you can use to build from. So you have gear, grav drives, habitats, reactors, shields, structural equipment, weapons, the bays themselves, the cargo bays, the cockpits, the different types of dockers, the different types of engines, and fuel tanks. Now, all of these have different types that you can go through and look at. Some of them have the same visuals, they just happen to have different stats. As an example, these are the 3 Titan tanks. Each one has a slightly greater cost and a greater fuel jump category. So it's essentially how far can you jump? How big is the gas tank here? Similarly with the gear and grav drives, you're going to find, with the grav drives, they'll all look the same. Like all the Helios drives look the same. They just cost different because they have different stats associated with them. So that's something to understand. And remember, some of these things you cannot flip around. So you're only going to be able to, they'll only mount certain ways. So here's a good example. We have certain gear. Like this specifically says pinpoint landing gear, port or 4. And then they've got different variants if we go left and right on the thumb pad. So on the top, when you're going through the categories, you're going to look at the fuel tanks. You'll use your bumper buttons. But once you're looking for, once you get in here and you see one of these that has an underscore underneath it, if you see the difference, like the Hope 5 landing gear is just one of them. The Hope 6 landing gear has 3 different types, and you can cycle through the types. They're just visually a little bit different. So you've got the Hope 6 landing gear port 4, Hope 6 landing gear port mid, and Hope 6 landing gear port aft. Now, in the other case here, you're going to notice on the bottom right, we actually have the flip button. What does the flip button do? Well, if we zoom in here and we hit flip, it literally just flips it to the other side. So it's just flipping it. So this would be, if I wanted to mount it on the left, this would be if I wanted to mount it on the right. So in this case, what I would do as an example is we would come down here and I would pick, like let's say I want to pick the port aft landing gear. So in this case, we've got the it's going to be shooting out towards the back in that direction, right? So what I want to do is I want to take that and I want to click it and accept it. Okay. Now that I've accepted that, I need to move it. So I'm going to make sure that that's selected. I'm then going to move it over here. I'm going to get the camera where I want it because I want to be able to align it properly. And I'm going to bring that down and I'm going to say I need to go down a tier. And I can move it in, and boom, when it goes green, it's now adjusting where I want it. Now, I could choose to put it back here if I wanted to as well and mount it to one position, or I could put it here. But in this case, I actually want to move it down one more tier because it's landing gear. I'm going to put it just like that so that the platforms are touching the ground. Now, I'm going to place that. Now, the easiest way to do this would be to then select this, duplicate it, flip this, move it to the other side, like so. Now I'm going to flip my camera around and we're going to come over here and we're going to drop it down a tier and we're going to mount it on the other side. Boom. Now we're done. That's what you use flipping for when you're choosing to put something on and mount it in a different direction. You just use the flip button. It's an easy way to take parts that you know are going to match up on either side, whether it's landing gear, engines, cargo bays, things where you know you're going to be duplicating that bit or piece, and then we can go from there. Now, there's obviously a ton of stuff in this list when you start looking at all the bits and pieces that you could potentially pull from to build a ship. So what exactly do you need? Well, some parts are optional. Others are not optional. So the things you absolutely have to have on every single ship is one cockpit, at least one engine, at least one reactor, at least one grav drive, at least one fuel tank, at least one docker, one bay, and a minimum of 2 landing gear. You're also going to need at least 1 habitat. This isn't really this. It's not the requirement in the same way that the other ones are like mandatory for the ship to actually function. The habitat is used because you need to be able to move from the cockpit to the bay and the docker and in between. So all of those pieces have to have a habitat between them to function. And that's how the bits and pieces put together. When you look at like the mounting system here and how everything snaps together that way. So it's kind of an important part of the next part of this, which is the attachment points, which are these little blue things that you see that are the points where you can actually mount things to them. And these can show up on the side, as in this case, we see them on the side right here. But we can also look at the ship over here behind us, and we can see that there's some on the top as well. Like, let's get out of the build menu here and come over here and go up here to the top. You're going to notice that there was, if we get over here, there's a better way to look at it. Now you can see that that ship over there that's already built has ones on top, and if we were to go underneath, we might not see any underneath right now, but if we were to strip some of these bits and pieces off, you might find underneath mountings as well. It just depends on what parts you're moving. Like this habitat as an example, if we were to move this habitat up, oops, hang on a second, I actually got to get it selected. If we were to move it up and then move the camera down, you're going to notice that it has mounting points underneath it as well, which allows it to snap on, you guessed it, to those points right there, and then you snap it in place. So that's how the attachments work, and that's an important part of when you're actually coming in here and looking at how do all these bits and pieces fit together, which ones do I absolutely have. Again, those are the ones you absolutely have to have, and they fit together in different ways. So as an example, you have to pay attention to this, which we talked about briefly. Hang on. Back. If we were to take this docker right here, it's a 4 docker. So it only mounts on the front. So if I wanted to have a different docker, I would come in here and say, okay, let's delete that piece. Let's look for a docker here as an example. I have different types of dockers. 4 port top. Or here's another one that's like a Pro Docker, which looks a little wonky as well. So let's say I wanted one on the top. I would find this one right here that fits on the top, and I would say, okay, I want to take this. I'm going to make sure that it's selected. I'm going to move it up a couple of levels because I know that I want it to mount on top. And I'm going to choose to put it like maybe I'll put it up here like that, right? Now, again, remember what we said earlier about the ship error thing? So on the bottom right, we can actually see that there's 5 errors popping up. So if we were to check the error list, only 1 landing bay is allowed. So all these things, it's because it's tracking 2 ships on the screen right now. It's an easy way to see what you're doing. The key here is you would build your first, build your stock ship that you want to build, your custom ship, I should say, and then delete the other ship to be able to get rid of the errors in that way where you need to have multiple, where it says only one of each is allowed. But the other ones where it says like landing bay needs to be connected to the cockpit, well, we would need to connect the landing bay to the cockpit in a way. We haven't actually added a great system here. That's just the control station and the landing gear. So if I wanted to like go in here and say I want to add a cockpit, that's the Armstrong cockpit. Maybe I want to do like the Viking cockpit. Like let's just use this one right here. And let's go ahead and put it right there, connect it in place. Boom. Now we have a cockpit, and now it threw up a whole bunch of other errors. What are the other errors that it's saying me? Oh man, Docker modules need to be on the outside of a ship. Oh, not on the top. What? Landing bay. What? So there's all these things that it'll tell you as you're going along, but that's the key to placing all of the bits and pieces that you want to place with the attachments based on the rule of 1 cockpit, at least 1 engine, 1 reactor, 1 grav drive, 1 fuel tank, 1 docker, 1 bay, 1 landing gear, and at least 1 habitat. The other thing to pay attention to with the attachment system is the icons themselves. So right here, you're going to see 3 different types of icons. We've got a circle icon with a spot in the middle. We've got a rectangular icon, a square icon, and then this one that looks kind of funky. Looks like kind of like a, it's kind of like a door, sort of. So doors are indicated by a circular dot with an arrow bouncing over it. So that's what we're looking for right there. Any sort of a door connection. You see the arrows that are pointing inwards. Um, those could be connections of any type. But basically, doors are the circular dot with an arrow bouncing over it. Structural dots are the structural points, I should say, are the circular ones that have dots like doors, and then there's also the square dots. And essentially, you can look at these types and how they fit together, but also in some cases, like if we pan the camera around here, we can see how things connect to each other. You see how those two match up right there? That's because this is meant to go right here and slot up in that manner. So essentially, just look for the way they look. The actual icons themselves will change, and you can use those icons to help guide you on where things can be placed together when you're doing the actual placement. Quick commercial break, everyone, to celebrate and give thanks to all of these amazing people who keep me on the air full time. Really appreciate the support. All you got to do is join as a member. You get access to private videos. You can also do super thanks on any upload or super chats and stickers on any live stream or premiere you see. And beyond that, don't forget we're multi-streaming over on Twitch now, so you can support over there as well. Thanks so much to everybody. Let's get back to the video at hand. Now, habitats is one of the areas where things can get really tricky, and there's a lot going on here. The big thing is that on the May 15th patch, May 15th, 2024, they added ship decoration to the game, and they also added these empty hab modules where you have modules that existed when the game launched, and those have existing decorations inside of them. But then if you want to decorate from scratch, you're going to be looking for habitats that don't have anything inside of them so that you get to customize the interior as you see fit. There are a variety of different types of habitats. There's companionways and storerooms, all-in-one berths, armories, captain's quarters, computer cores, control stations, engineering bays, infirmaries, living quarters, science labs, and workshops. There's all different types that you can use to customize. But what you're looking for as you go up and sort through these with the D-pad, and you let's say we look for the 2-in-1 right here. This says Hope Tech all-in-one berth 2-in-1, gives us an explanation on the left. Now if I use the right on the D-pad, the left or right, we can cycle through, and it shows me there's Hope Tech all-in-one berth, an armory, a captain's quarters, a computer core, control station, an infirmary, living quarters, science lab, workshop, all the things we just talked about. And then we get to these. All-in-one berth empty 2x1, captain's quarters empty, computer core empty, so on and so forth. As a general rule, most of these that are 2x1 or bigger will have an empty version. The 1x1s will not. The ones that are 1x1, they will have a preset interior design to them, so they'll already have like the research stations and the chairs and tables and everything set up. You can add to those once you go into ship customization, but you cannot change those from default. If you want to start from scratch, you would do something like this, and we would go, oops, that's the 1x1. 2x1 is what we're looking for. We would go to a 2x1 and say, I want the empty armory, and I'm going to stick that on the ship somewhere and place that. Just an important thing to note here is that there are empty versions and there are the versions that existed with the game when they had launched, and the difference between those two is just you being able to customize the interior as you see fit with the ship customizer. Similar to the other parts of the ship where the brand names change the exterior, you're going to see a little bit of an exterior difference in the habitats based on the brand name, but you're also going to see a variety of interior differences with color schemes and everything else on the insides based upon the brand name itself. You can't actually check those from here. So if you want to see what those look like, you would need to build the ship with a specific type and then go inside and look at it. Obviously, you can also go on the internet and try to find screenshots and stuff. I'm not getting into that in this build. I'm just saying that's how you can tell what the interior of one of these looks like. Reactors are a major part of any ship, and they are what power the weapon systems, the grav drives, and everything. But in order to pilot the higher tiers of ships, which have higher tiers of reactors, you're going to have your piloting skill leveled up, which is one of the reasons I backed out to the tech tree to show you what this looks like. So in the piloting portion of the tech tree, you're going to see these various ranks. Rank 3 is when you can unlock the ability to pilot Class B ships. When you start off, it's only Class A ships. And in order to do Class C ships, you will also need to rank this up to rank 4. So you'll need to level up your character a bit to be able to fully unlock the ability to use Class B reactors and Class C reactors. And in addition, you're also going to be looking at this one, which is Starship Design, which allows the installation of improved ship modules. And then the deeper you go into this, the deeper you can go into the shipbuilding component, because there are certain modules that are locked behind your ability to use them or not. So that's something to pay in mind. Now, in terms of the actual ship reactors, we can go back in here and we can look at the ship system again really quick, because there are different types of reactors that you want to look at. And we would go in here and look at these reactors, and we can go down through here and see these are on the left hand side. You're going to look, these are all Class A's, there's Class B's, there's Class C's, okay? And then look on the bottom left, it's going to tell me that I need Starship Design rank 3 or rank 4 in order to install these. So they're grayed out to me right now because I don't have the proper rank to use them. This is an important aspect of, if you're truly going to get into shipbuilding, you have to also level up your character and put points into Starship Design and piloting to get access to these. But the reactors go from Class A, B, or C. The Class A reactors put out power for weapons and engines, but are pretty lightweight and don't add a lot of health to your ship in the terms of the hull. Class B reactors are kind of in between, and Class C reactors are the best in terms of hit points and everything else for your ship. But you do have to rank up and get your skills up if you want to be able to install the best of these reactors onto your ship. Now over here on the left-hand side, we're going to look at the ship systems. It's kind of important to understand what all this means, because there's a lot of stuff in here that relates to the actual building of a ship. So as an example, the hull is how many hit points your ship has. That's beyond the shields. So your shields can take a certain amount of damage. Once those go down, your hull starts taking damage. The better the hull, the more hit points you can have. So obviously, the better reactors have better hulls. The better hulls give you more hit points. You're better to go. Cargo is the amount of stuff you can carry. Then there's grav thrusts, which is whether or not your grav drive is going to be enough to push your ship's mass. And you're going to see this, mostly you're going to get a warning about this in the flight menu when you're building your ship, but it's something that's important to pay attention to, because you'll be told, hey, your ship needs more maneuverability, which we kind of covered at the beginning of this. And the maneuverability itself is how basically your engines are versus your ship's mass, which determines how quickly you're going to turn your ship. All of these things are related to your reactor, your grav thrust, the mass of your ship, and everything else. And the mass is obviously how much your ship weighs, which affects a ton of other systems, such as the grav drive, the landing gear, and all these other things. All of this adds up to increase your overall mass and hull. And then at a certain point, basically you're going to need to upgrade the engines and the grav drive itself to be able to handle all of the additional weight that you're putting onto the ship, because everything requires power to operate, which then ties back to the reactor, which ties back to the fact that you need your piloting rank as well as your upgrading rank ranked up so that you can install the modules that are going to be capable of driving the mass of the ship that you're trying to build. Something to pay attention to. Well, that's it, everybody. That is essentially, in a nutshell, the Ultimate Beginner's Guide to Shipbuilding on the Xbox. Now, I'm going to be doing a build of this ship at some point in the near future. I'm going to be modifying this to make it a sleek little mid-grade ship that's going to be capable of hauling a decent amount of cargo, but mostly I want it to be a fighter vessel, because I really do like the layout of this. The very first time I played through the game, I got one of these and I turned it into a little bit of a hauler until I get the shield breaker. And I do have the shield breaker, which is the best ship I think in the game for me, but I do love the look of this ship, so we're going to be tweaking this a little bit more in an upcoming video, so hopefully you'll stick around and stay tuned for that. In the meantime, if you want other guides for Starfield, check out the playlist below. There's a ton of videos there. I've done a couple of playthroughs, and we're going to be playing through the Shattered Space DLC soon this fall, so stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, daily streams here and on Twitch at 11 a.m. Central, and sometimes in the afternoons as well, and I play a lot of different games. This is a variety channel, so check them all out. We'll see you in the Discord and the Patreon and all the socials. Until next time, stay safe. Happy gaming.